Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call right here on the Borders and Borders hotline. It's 412-575-2600 is that number to call. You can also tweet us at KDPomp, at Gene Collier. We have a lot to get into, beginning with the news both here and in Philadelphia. Today, the Penguins practiced. Patrick Hornqvist was not on the ice, and then afterwards we found out that he is out with an upper body injury, which could be a lot of things, from a shoulder to a concussion to anything above the waist. So he is out, and he will not play in Game 4 tomorrow night. Dominik Simon goes from a healthy scratch to the top line. We'll talk about that as we go along. And then in Philadelphia, some friendly fire going on as Radko Gudas accidentally runs into an uncharging Sean Couturier, who goes head over skates. And the next thing you know, he's helped off the ice, and it looks like he won't play tomorrow, though nothing official from the Philadelphia Flyers. But he was in a lot of pain, and Claude Giroux was overheard saying it doesn't look good, and he is a big part of what they do. So let's welcome in Gene Collier, outstanding columnist from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Those are both significant players. Hornqvist makes that power play work, and Couturier has been their best everything, really.
Yeah, it's actually a good discussion. Who's a bigger part of what their team is doing? And that's a hard call. Really bad luck for the Flyers. I mean, he's an excellent player. And Hornqvist, just such a factor on the power play that's really begun to click here in the last 60 minutes. So, tough luck for both clubs.
Let's talk about the power play, because the implications there for the Penguins are pretty severe when you look at Hornqvist's presence in front of the net. He is the best right now at getting in front of goaltenders, blocking their line of sight. When he's on the ice, 26.2%, as Jason Mackey reported today. When he's not on the ice for the power play, they drop all the way down to 12%. So the question is it Zach Aston Reese then who is inserted there, and he does the same sort of role, or do you put someone else in there?
I might go with Zach Aston Reese, because he is, he's a very physical guy, and he likes to play in the spots that Hornqvist likes to play in. So that's what I would do. But I'll defer to Mike Sullivan, who has won two Stanley Cups. And I have not won yet one.
Well, Dominik Simon's an interesting choice, too, to be on that top line. I know he's had success there with Crosby, and he's fast, and I think Crosby likes fast players, but he has guys like Brian Rust who could have been elevated, but I guess Mike Sullivan doesn't want to mess with the third line of Brassard, Connor Sherry, and Rust at this point, and he likes his fourth line together with Aston Reese, along with Tom Kuhnhackl and Riley Shea. And so I guess we're just going to see what Simon can do, but he's thrown right into the fire there. As far as Couturier, now he was inserted, the practice started today as a top line with Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek, as Dave Haxtell tried to get something going there, and then all of a sudden now that has to shift, you would think, although nothing official again from the Flyers. So Couturier is a guy who has been 5-on-5, the guy who's assigned to try to stop Sidney Crosby. And he's the best on their team at doing that. That's another significant loss. Not just the scoring, because he had 31 goals and 76 points. He was a plus 37 player.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a tremendous player, and he's been a great player against the Flyers. Against the Penguins.
Tonight we're watching Columbus and Washington. This one is 2-2 in overtime. We'll keep you apprised of what happens in it. But the statistics don't lie when it comes to trailing 0-3. Some teams have been able to come back, but in the history of teams in the NHL playoffs down 3-0, the team that had 3 games won 184 of 188 of those series. So 184-4. Elias Sports Bureau doesn't mess up with those numbers. That's a 97% conversion rate when you're up 3-0. So really, Washington needs to have this game here tonight.
I agree, Bob.
Let's talk about the Pirates, too, because they were in action. There was snow, once again, over at PNC Park. Not a lot of people were there to see it. The announce crowd was, I don't even know, but whatever it was drastically different. I give those people credit, and a nice thing, the Pirates tonight gave vouchers to everyone who was there as they left to get another game ticket on them. And they should do stuff like that. As far as the game tonight, 2-0. Chad Bettis outpitches Trevor Williams. And the Pirates are guilty of so much bad base running that it's almost a common nightly thing. And tonight we saw 2 instances, Gene, and I'll talk both about them with you. Number one, in the 3rd inning, Trevor Williams gets on base on an infield single. Okay. What in the world is he thinking, trying to tag from first to go to second on a fly ball to left field?
He's not thinking.
Not thinking. Why would he do that?
No, from not thinking.
Do you blame him, or do you blame the first base coach? Could have looked at him. Bart Tate could have said, "Hey, what are you doing? Don't."
I'll bet he did.
And he ignored it, you think? Then in the bottom of the 8th, Jordy Mercer. Now, this is a guy who's been around for a long time. He's on third with one out. There's a grounder to third. You cannot run on contact. As soon as I saw him break, I said he's dead, and he was. He was thrown out at third. At home, you can't do that when you're down 2 and a precious run is on third base.
Well, I'm never a big fan of the contact play, but it does work in certain circumstances. You don't usually see it there, but it's one of those things where when it works, everybody says, oh, that was a good idea. But if you are going to go, especially in that situation, that's a case, Bob, where you have to take a look back and see what's happening. I know they tell you not to do that, but there are some circumstances where you do look back. And had Jordy looked back, he'd have seen how far he was going to be out by. He could have stopped and allowed the batter to get to second base or been in a rundown long enough to get the batter to second base. Then at least you keep a person in scoring position, but he didn't do that either. I try not to defend the Pirates on base running. It's pretty much indefensible, but it's a baseball-wide thing. Base running is a lost art. It's really gone out of the game.
Just like bunting in most cases.
Very much
and
like
even
bunting.
tonight, the Pirates had a chance with the shift. Just bunt. Just get on base. You need base runners on the ninth inning. They didn't do that. Anyway, 412-575-2600. That is the number to call. Air your opinions. Do it now. Do it live right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, only on Pittsburgh CW.